It's the new year, and we've got some resolutions along with a special guest. Let's roll. Here we go.
We're talking about a lot of these things. We're talking about how to mentor.
File that under only the best decisions are made after midnight.
Right. That's right. Your network is your net worth. Connect with someone.
Welcome to the CPCU Champion Hour. Happy New Year! I should have brought like a noisemaker or something.
Confetti.
My Heather, the New Year has treated you very poorly. I have to say, you're a completely different person. We are joined by the one, the only, the man, the myth, the legend, Mike Koscielny, former president of the CPCU Society Executive Council, and just all-around mentor guy. We were remarking about how he probably should have starred in Multiplicity instead of Michael Keaton, seeing as how he seems to be everywhere at once. How's it going, Mike?
I'm doing great, thanks. Happy New Year.
Happy New Year. This is a reminder to like, comment, subscribe, and share. Definitely help us with the algorithm. Every single like gets this out there to not just CPCU members. It gets it out there to everyone who is on YouTube and other social media sites looking up insurance, risk management, insurance industry information. And as always, this is a production of the CPCU Society, the institutes, and the CPCU Society volunteers, more importantly, because we all are what makes things run for the society. So that being said, I want to set things up for a trivia question. We don't really have any segments. This is a special little short episode, but I want to set things up for a trivia question next episode, which will be airing later this week with President Sharon Coaches. And I'm going to ask Mike, because I know he knows this answer. What city was the CPCU Society originally started in way back when?
Oh, wow. I want to say...
If you think about it, it's kind of a layup for you.
Chicago, yeah.
Yes.
Exactly
Now, if I'm correct,
first place that came to my mind, by the way, your hint.
Yeah. 77 years ago now. I always get that mixed up if it's 77 or 78.
Just for the record, I wasn't there.
You did not come on the scene for a few years yet.
Yeah.
So we are talking about New Year's resolutions. It is the new year. A lot of people, this is like a custom. A lot of people, will spend the next 2 weeks at the gym and then, pay for the next 6 months of gym membership and never go again. So we want to talk about some, specific changes, at least, that people are thinking about for the new year, some goal setting and things like that. But we were talking offline before, and I'll give this to you first, Mike. What's your general impression of New Year's resolutions? Is it generally positive? Is it something that's a mixed bag? How do you feel about that?
I think sometimes they're created in the drunken stupor of New Year's Eve, where I'm never going to drink again, or I'm not going to eat that much food, right? You're right, though, about gym memberships and that. I think there's a spike in memberships at like January 2nd through the end of the month. And then I can tell you, I did that a few years ago. When I moved across the state, I joined like the day after New Year's, and I probably spent 6 months. And then the next year and a half, I drove by. That was about as close as I got. Waved. But I think I sort of gotten away from New Year's resolutions because I've always been a planner anyway and a goal setter, and so there's nothing pivotal about January 1st for me, other than it's sort of a time for me to evaluate sort of where I've come to and where I need to go and what things I've missed and what I need to do to sort of get back on track. So it's certainly a time for reflection, I think, for me personally about my goals in my life and the changes I'm going through. And at the same time, everybody wants to eat better and exercise more, that takes commitment and dedication that, it wavers with me over time. I get to the point when the scale starts to show a few more pounds, then I get focused again, right? And start eating better, stay away from the candy and all that sort of stuff. But I just think it's, if you're a planner like I am, January 1 is just a point of reflection. I look back, what did I do last year? And then based on my plan, and what do I need to do this year to stay on track to where I really want to be?
Yeah. What's your thoughts on that, Precious?
So I recently saw, I think it was something on my Pinterest, and it says, I wish I was the person that I thought I was when I bought all this produce. Like, oh, the salad plans I had, and now the poor wilted crisper drawer, right? But no, I think
the irony of saying that on a program with a vegan.
right. I know, right? But to Mike's point, me personally, I think that my birthday is really kind of that anniversary that I've used historically to kind of do that compare and contrast, where I look at, okay, this is when I'm turning another year older. If next year looked like last year, would I be happy with that? And if not, what is it that I plan to do to make things different, instead of just waiting by osmosis or some other, outside force to come in and force the change. Now, granted, from a business perspective, Q1, so it's, to me, is bigger than just like 1/1, even though 1/1, of course, in the agent broker world, man, 1/1, that renewal date is like, one of the doomsday dates of death that we've all been, killing ourselves in the last part of Q4 to make sure that your 1/1s are together. But no, I think to your point, there's no magic with that singular date, but it is about that preparation, even that reflection and looking at, okay, when I had a goal, did I stick to it? What were the hurdles that kept me from it? And, do I need to reevaluate? Is that goal still viable? What is it that I need to do maybe to divide that up into smaller, benchmarks, getting towards that goal, instead of the all or nothing mentality that we tend to take, like you said, the gym membership, and the only thing that gets thinner is our wallet, because that the EFT hits at the first of the month, whether I show up or not, the oh man, I've lost a ton of, dollars, but nothing, because there has to be that why, right? We kind of reevaluate our why and say, is this why? Is it big enough? Is it deep enough? Does it even make sense? Is it something that moves quality of life? Is it something that has impact on my family, my sense of purpose? And I think this year, rolling into, 2022, and tying that into like the Great Resignation, where people are just seeking a deeper sense of fulfillment now. Especially with what we do for a living. Do we have impact? Does what we do matter? Is it just transactional? Am I just living from, paycheck to paycheck? So yeah, I think that, if anyone's kind of going through that rote, just the tradition of saying, oh yeah, well, these are all the lofty things. I'm going to save money. I'm going to lose weight. I'm going to all these things. Or do you actually have an action plan? So I really like Mike's point about being a planner. How do you know when you're tracking towards that? Even if I'm not set to arrive on time, am I still moving forward? Because I think a lot of times we just look at it like, that was, time got away from me, and now I'm just going to shelf it. And that's usually a reflection of the why.
Yeah, I can say little kind of life hack or just kind of like general, maybe just a change in perspective in terms of how I kind of look at like changes in my life, whether it be business life or even personal life. It takes the better part of like 90 days to really establish a new habit. So if this is something that like, if there's something that you want to build into your life, that's going to be habitual and you want to keep up over a long period of time, like it needs to be done for 90 days. So the one thing that I try and do is say there is like that, top 4, top 5 list of things I want to improve or do better in the new year. I typically don't tackle them all day one, right?
Yeah.
I know that all I have to do is be consistent for 90 days with one of them. And then it becomes part of my routine. And then second quarter, I'm going to focus on the next one down the list and try and be consistent with that for 90 days, knowing full well that that first thing that I changed will probably stick if I'm able to keep up with it for the first 3 months. And so, yeah, it's I know there's a compulsion for people to want to like just shed everything and change their life around. And like you were saying, Mike, like, New Year's Eve, like in that moment of like, drunken humility or maybe even moment of weakness, you're like, oh, this I'm in the wrong place. I need to do everything different, right? But truthfully, the way that you're going to affect lasting change is to be able to take it in bite-sized chunks and really kind of like work it into your life, as opposed to just throwing everything against the wall all at once, then trying to keep it going. It's never going to work. It's never, because one little thing kind of trips you up and you like it all unravels really, really quickly. Let's talk about some specifics. So, whether we're calling them New Year's resolutions or just kind of, goals and objectives for 2022, what's something that you specifically want to focus on and improve or change in 2022 going forward, Mike?
Well, there's kind of two things. One, I've been talking about this book for almost 2 years now, and it's certainly making progress, but not nearly the progress that I'd like. And so, as I sort of reflect back on why, there's 1,000 excuses. This happened, and this happened, and that happened. And then I went back to got my master's degree. It's the point you were raising before, Matt, about how it's hard to focus on more than one thing at one time, right? So the point of having it become routine, right? So all those other things were more routine than me sitting down to really focus on completing the book. And so that's one of my primary things. It's important to me and sort of in this place in my work life. And so I want to make sure that I complete that. The other part of this, and this is something that my wife and I had lots of conversations about, is family. We are very distant from our families. I live in Florida, and all my family lives in the Chicago area. And that's hard, particularly now with children and grandchildren. So, we're really looking very deeply at that as an objective, if you will, or a goal for this next coming year is, how do we do this? How do we spend more time with family? Because in all due respect to everything we do, family's most important, right? No one sits on their deathbed and says, geez, I wish I worked 12 hours a day more frequently before. They always think, geez, I wish I spent more time with my family, right?
Oh, yeah.
And especially when family is, I tell my wife, I said, my grandchildren are, one will be 4 in March and the other's 2. And we got about 10 years, maybe, where they're going to be interested in being with, Grammy and Papa. And after that, they're going to be teenagers and they're going to be wanting to go places and do things. And, they'll come to see us only because they have to. Mom and dad drag them here. But so we have 10 years really to get that focus. And when I reflect on that, I think about the relationship I have with my grandparents. I was very fortunate that my father's father lived with us as I was growing up, and I had a really strong relationship with him. And my mother's parents lived 3 miles away, and they came over every weekend, every Saturday came for dinner. And so I had a strong relationship with them, and I have the most amazing memories of that. And I want my grandchildren to have the same memories of me that same way. So if I'm focusing on 2 things right now, is get this thing done, this book thing done, so that I can kind of move on in my next phase. But more importantly is family. Spend more time with family because it's so important. And I don't want to miss it.
Yeah, no, most definitely. I can say that that's something that, and I know, Precious, you may have felt this way as well, or at least this pressure in being a business owner. that's always something that's kind of in the back of your mind, or maybe it's even in the forefront of your mind, is you're in a situation where you could put in that extra 15 minutes, and that extra 15 minutes could result in another sale or increased revenue or retaining account or something like that. But it's also 15 minutes that you're taking away from, picking up your kid from school or going to soccer game, or, one of a million different, kind of milestones that happen within a family relationship. And it's tough. Like, it's really difficult to I feel for people who have a hard time striking that balance. And myself, I felt it in the first 2 or 3 years after I started my agency. Was I spent literally every moment that I could trying to work on generating new business or setting up, operations and things like that, and recruiting people, or generating new relationships with carriers. And it got to the point where, after like 2.5 years, my wife was like, I'm surprised the kids remember your name when you walk in the door at night, right? And that was kind of a wake up call. It was something it was kind of scary to me too, because there is that ticking clock, like, constantly. It's just like, your kids are only going to be like that young, carefree, kind of pure, kid for a period of time. And then after that, it goes away. They become adult and your relationship changes. But, like you said, on someone's deathbed, they're never sitting there saying, like, I spent too much time with my family. I should spend more time, like, yeah, like out at conquest. Like, no one, I think, ever thinks. I mean, like, maybe one random person, but almost no one ever kind of like thinks that way. And have you felt that pressure, Precious? Like, that seems like it's just been a constant for me these first couple of years.
But I think, when I look back at the seasons in life, right? There's, the scripture talks about, kind of time to reap, time to sow, all those sort of things. And I know that, first of all, we're all, all present company here, very fortunate to have that supportive spouse that has allowed for these things to be possible. I remember early on in my early 20s, I was a single mother to my now 19-year-old daughter, and the company I was working for, my supervisor had shared, I think it was his work anniversary, and he had like a perfect attendance or something for multiple years. And during one of our one-on-ones, I told him, well, I kind of told him, I'm like, who picked up the kids when they got sick? Right. And I said, the difficulty is sometimes working women don't have wives. So I was like, the accolade that you have about perfect attendance, it wasn't because you somehow, it's because you had support. And so I think about over the years, when my husband and I, early in our marriage, where I had to have kind of the stable something because he was in growth mode. And then we went through kind of a shift here in later years where I told him, hey, sweetheart, this is something that's really important to me. I need us to, we kind of huddled as a family and said, okay, look, these are the things that are important because hopefully this is a legacy opportunity. This isn't just because mom wants to increase her take home pay or some selfish endeavor, but ultimately it's like, okay, I want to build something for our family, maybe something that I can hand down, something that like I just have to really dig in. And the same conversation happened when I pursued my CPCU. I'm like, hey, look, there's going to be a lot of study involved. There's going to be a lot of days where I might not go to the movie. I might fall back and, do another practice exam or something. But having that buy-in and that support is so critical. And it's something that we overlook sometimes, that a lot of people don't have that support. But I know, again, oh gosh, the years get away from us, right? You're like, okay, pre-COVID, post-COVID. Around between the years of 2015 and 2019, I worked for a company out of Chicago. I live here in Dallas. And so I was on an airplane back and forth to, it was always the same thing, Dallas Love Field, Midway, Dallas Love Field, Midway, for on average once every 6 to 8 weeks, which is a lot. It's a lot of travel. And one of those heartbreaking moments for me was watching like a little family video that I didn't recognize. I'm like, what is this? Where are we? Oh, Mom, that was that trip that you went, so we did this while you were away. And that was my epiphany, like, wow, it's a sacred season, especially when you're raising your children. As someone now who has a college student as a child, and I still say that out loud. And I remember hearing that when I was younger. Oh, I remember. You're like, you don't remember. And, and I'm like, okay, when did we get to, because oftentimes the last don't register as the last in that moment. Like, you really don't remember the last diaper you changed, the last bottle you fed, the last time you were able to pick a child up and like just hoist them on your hip. These moments just get away from you until they've passed. And then you look back, and I was wrestling around my kids the other day, and I told my daughter, like, come on, come sit on my lap. And she's like, nah, Mom, I think that's over. I think we're past I don't want to hurt you. And I'm like, we can't do that anymore. She's like, yeah, no, that's not a thing anymore. So yeah, it's balance. But I think your question as far as, my goals, right? How do I change that? One of the things I started doing here, and I plan to do more so moving forward, is putting time on my calendar for me. Blocking time, even if I don't have a specific goal for that time. It's not necessarily always a doctor's appointment. Maybe it's just a mental health break. Maybe it's just just some wellness time. And so when I block time on the calendar, when people jump on my calendar to schedule time or whatnot, I already have that space. And so I'm free to take a walk or get another glass of water or just sit and listen to a good song or whatever I want to do. And so it doesn't have to be this big chunk of PTO. Right. It can just be these tiny investments and say, I need to disconnect because I need the time to recharge too. And it's my prerogative how I spend that time. It doesn't have to be where I'm MIA for a day.
Yeah.
But yes, I've started doing that now, just putting blocks of time on my calendar and honoring those times. I show up for so many people. I have to show up for me.
Yeah.
Very, very good point. Do you do that, Mike? Do you schedule out you time, or at least time that you kind of partition so that it these other things, whether it be work or other things, don't invade in that time and space, so that you have some freedom to do some things?
I absolutely do that. I think I'm an early riser. I'm up at 5, so I'm up. And
bless your heart.
It's the curse of my father. My father was an early riser, and women talk about mothers will say to daughters, "I hope you have a daughter just like you were." Right?
Yeah,
that's the curse of the mother. But for me, it was waking up at 5 a.m. So, but I read. That's when I do my reading. I'm up, usually pretty bright, and so I'll read for pleasure and for business. I think it keeps my mind fresh and new ideas in that. It kind of sparks some potential articles. So whenever I read, I keep a pad thinking, hey, I can write an article about this for insights or whatever. But the other thing, I go back to my days. There was a long period of my career where I was responsible for sales in 7 states, one company, 16 states, and another. I fly Monday night, come home Friday. I was on the road. The last couple of years I spent with my last company, not the current one, but the one prior. Every Monday I flew to Princeton, spent time in the office, and came back on Friday afternoon. I did that for 2 years. And, my children were grown by then, but the relationship with that woman I lived with is just as important as the one you have with your children. And so I learned early on when I was in that sales role, when my son told my mother-in-law that I had moved to Connecticut. Because I'd spent so much time in Connecticut, he thought I'd moved there. He was probably 8 or 9 years old at the time. And I thought, okay, I got to stop this. It's important. So I made the commitment, and I've pretty much followed it since then. Is Monday through Friday, 5 a.m. till 6 p.m., I'm working. After that, it's their time. Weekends, I never touched the laptop on the weekend. I never went online. Maybe Sunday night after they all went to bed, I might spend an hour in the office, in my house, working. But I even do that today in my role today. When I'm working, I'm working. And when I'm not working, which is usually before or after the normal work hours, with some, there are opportunities that come up, then I'm focused on trying to spend time with those that are around me that are important to me. And I think that's good advice. I learned that sort of the hard way and the comment from my son was saying, geez, I thought Dad, and he said it to my mother-in-law of all people. She said, Give the phone to your mother.
Is everything okay there?
What's going on? Why did you move to Connecticut? You guys getting a divorce? No, he's working now.
Well,
I think that's the whole balance thing. And I think as we kind of roll into this new world we're living in right now, I really think it's good because there's more time now. There's no commute time.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, there's downsides to working at home, sort of the isolation and all the rest of that. I think that's a whole nother conversation. But there's so much more time to be at home, right? So I have breakfast with my wife, which before this whole thing happened, I was gone. She was still asleep. I'd leave 7 a.m. and she's still sound asleep. Now we sit and have breakfast together, which is really nice. We could spend some time together in the morning. And then, if I'm working from home, we have lunch together. And if she's not doing something. So, I think there's more and more opportunities to sort of separate ourselves from our work and spend more time with the things that are most important to us. I think our family. Both are good. You have to do both.
Sounds like you had at least a few working lunches or happy hours at the Tiger's Tail or at Triumph Brewery up here in Princeton.
Been there, done
that. Definitely New Jersey staples. If you ever spend any time in Princeton, there's actually there's like a mini hub of insurance companies in Princeton here in New Jersey, which is pretty interesting.
Yeah.
It's
a great town. I enjoyed living there, 4 nights a week for 2 years. But yeah, it's hard to be away. I feel your pain with that, Precious. It's really tough.
Yeah.
I miss a lot of school programs and all that kind of stuff.
So, Precious, what's kind of at the top of your list? What are you looking to work on? What are you looking to kind of like improve or tweak or move around? I know that there's probably some moving pieces because you're just going on almost a year into the new agency. So what's really kind of top of mind for you for 2022?
Yeah, it's really interesting because when I sit down and, that introspection that I think the pandemic brought for all of us, and what I realized is that I have been very fortunate to have been given platforms and throughout the my career journey, and especially here recently with the connections that I built within the CPCU Society and in those sort of things. And so my challenge to myself is, am I really using where I am to benefit others? How have I given back? Because you get to a certain point, not to say that earnings are unimportant. They're never unimportant. That's why we do what we do. These bills are due every month. But at the same time, really kind of questioning whether or not I've done enough to extend a hand, to encourage, to pave a way. And so 2022 is going to come with a lot more of showing up in front of the camera, a lot of speaking, a lot of really advocating is really kind of the core of it. So in all of the vast world of PNC, because there's so much that we cover, the professional lines are really what's got my attention right now, learning all the ins and outs of I've written my fair share of like D&O and EPL and things like that. But where I've really found an opportunity that I'm really excited about, and I appreciate that I get to hang out with a crowd that appreciates my excitement about insurance. Because you try to like get past all the alphabet soup and like get to the heart of the matter, right? Is explaining the correlation between, again, happy employees and reducing EPL risk, right? And so when you have low turnover, when you have folks that are engaged and compensated and appreciated and all of these sort of things, it's proven that it reduces those allegations such as discrimination, retaliation, all those ugly words that go along with that. And so being able to draw those connections that taking care of people is not just a good thing to do, it's not just the right thing to do, but it could be the profitable thing to do too. And driving those points home. So I think like many of us, years ago when I first got my PNC license, I was excited because I'll tell anyone, not only did it set me up for some of my professional endeavors, but it made me a better consumer. And so I've always challenged that, how many people would benefit if they really understood the inner workings of how this works and stop viewing our product as a necessary evil and understand how this can really be embraced and integrated into building long-term plans. So that's really kind of the mission that I'm on, is to share, get in front of audiences, even outside of just us, because we can all gather in a circle and high five one another because we all speak the same language. But does this message permeate outside of these walls? And if so,
Yeah.
how do I get in front of those ears that really need to hear that? So yeah, that's really my focus for this year.
I love that, because we were we were talking before we hit record about just the kind of the evolution of the society, right? And how we're evolving into this even more open, broader, inclusive, and we've always been diverse, but doubling down on that diversity, or at least, we've had the opportunity for diversity. We're taking advantage of that opportunity much more so now than in the past. And I love that you're taking the tact of it's not just kind of like there's like the philosophical reasons for things, and then there's like the practical, like, business reasons for things, right? The best things that sell insurance is somewhere in the middle of those two, right? Like, you have to touch the feels, and at the same time, you also have to make the business case for it. And the beauty is that there is so much there on both sides of that, whether it be, employee turnover costs, whether it be D&O or EPL claims, whether it be overall productivity of the workforce, and employers are always looking for non-financial ways to incentivize employees, or at least they should be, because typically you get a lot more bang for your buck that way, because it typically results in, higher revenue and profitability versus just having to kind of double down on salary incentives and things like that. All of that goes a long way to making a case for really good risk management too, which is something that we talked about in one of the older episodes of one of the former shows. Rest in peace. But but so
it still lives in perpetuity out there, right?
It's there. It's on the It's on the inner tubes. You can look them up. Go to the Agent and Broker CPCU YouTube page, and you can check them out. But make sure
still
that
getting
you
royalties, aren't I? I'm getting royalties still from that.
Right?
Yeah. Evergreen, man, evergreen.
It's mostly in the form of high fives and handshakes, but but I love, Precious, that you're looking at it from kind of both sides, right? Like you've identified that there's a kind of this, squishy, really good, feeling reason in order to do these things, but then also there's an extremely practical, very strong case just from a business standpoint in order to kind of like go after these things and do them well, to benefit these organizations and, your clients or potential clients down the road. I love that. What are your thoughts on that, Mike? I think that's something that we kind of tangentially covered in the episode with Tony Koscielny about the Great Resignation, but just in general, like, what are your thoughts about just how things have changed over the last 2 years and kind of like that perspective shift in terms of the workforce and how things are evolving? Because you look at it from, I'm trying to be measured here, much more seasoned, perspective on things. And you've been through a lot of different business cycles in your career. How has it really kind of hit you?
It's interesting because pre-COVID, I was not in the camp of remote employees that were in the transaction world, right? But I managed remote employees. All my sales team in 2 different companies, one in 8 states, I had 12 reps, and another 16 states, I had 20 reps. They were all remote. They work from home, and you really can't be in an agent's office all living in the same location in Overland Park, Kansas. It just doesn't work. So I understood how to manage remote employees, but I was reluctant to do that with underwriters. And what's interesting to me was the reason I was reluctant is I sort of call it the over the wall conversations that happen. I don't use the water cooler because we have a water cooler in our office, but no one stands there and talks by it. Nobody. So it's always these conversations over the wall. Hey, I got this risk, Precious. What do you think about it? Take a look. Here's the policy number, right? So you have these conversations. And that's how junior underwriters learn from senior underwriters, right? Because they'll give you this sage advice about, that they walk both ways uphill to school and with no boots and stuff. But the reality was that I didn't know how to manage that. And then, March 18th, 2020 happens, and everybody went home. And now I'm at this dilemma. How do I manage these people now that they're not in the same building as I am? And I would say there was certainly some trepidation on my part initially,
Mm.
but I will tell you, from this sage, more seasoned person, I am completely behind the notion of remote working in any role. So I have people that are transaction-based people, and then I have people that handle transactions, but also interact with agents. So they're on the phone. And we were able to pull this off to the point where our productivity and our quality and our customer service standards have been met every month.
Yep.
And so what I realized was the over-the-wall conversation is still the challenge, but the work gets done. And I would argue that my team is happier that some of them had to drive 45 minutes to the office. Now, they took the job knowing it was going to be 45 minutes, but now that they're at home and they don't have 45-minute commute, their lives are more fulfilling because they can spend time with their family. They have children, they have their spouses, whatever, the dog, whatever it is that keeps them at home. The other thing what was interesting to me is then I had to add some staff, and I went to the HR department. I said, well, let's recruit like we always do. So we recruit, within about 30 miles of the office, and we set this office up 3 years ago, and I was getting resumes from people that we had not decided to interview 3 years ago, and they were no better, which unfortunately was sort of sad. And so I called the HR director up one day and I said, Judy, do me a favor. Can we put remote next to that?
Mm-hmm.
As soon as we did, I will tell you the next 6 resumes, I had a hard time choosing between 6 because they were that good. And Tony talks about this. I know because I listened to his the session he had. I think it was New Jersey. As soon as you see remote, you're as an employee, you're could be potentially in the driver's seat. I would tell you that the employer is in the driver's seat too, because we're offering you a remote opportunity, which is certainly an enticement. So, but I've hired now, I have underwriters in Knoxville, Tennessee, Columbia, South Carolina, and I have 6 in Florida that are nowhere near where our office is in Sarasota. Those are all recent hires. We onboarded them, we trained them, we got them in the workflow, and they're producing just as if they were sitting in the office. So I think it can be done, but you have to be deliberate about what you're doing and how you do it. And one thing that I've come to the understanding of, I think, is that as an employer, you have just as much a stake in this thing as the employee does. And so, what I would suggest is, as an employer, you got to make sure that you are reaching out every way possible to let people feel that they're part of the greater organization, that they get a sense of what the culture is, and that they can interact with their fellow workers, because they're, sitting in whatever your setup is at home is very isolating, right? So we have to create opportunities for that. And I don't mean having happy hours and things like that. There's other opportunities to do that. But as an employee, you have a stake in this too. And this is the piece I think that's often overlooked. Whether they were in the office or not, non-performers that were in the office are non-performers at home.
Mm-hmm.
And it's incumbent on the management and the supervisors of my team to help them become performers, right? No one comes to a job and says, oh, I'm not going to work really hard here. I'm just going to collect a salary. And we figure those people out pretty quick.
Yeah.
But it's incumbent on leadership, on the company, to make sure that you are focused on helping improve and develop the people that you have that are non-performers, even if they're at home. But the employee, my view of this is, and I say it all the time to my team, you have certain requirements, right? You got to make our productivity standards, your quality standards. They're very clear. They're attainable. And if you're on the phone, we have quality customer service standards. If you make all those numbers, you can work anywhere you want. I don't care if you want to move to Siberia or Alaska, or it doesn't matter to me. If you can do the numbers that we've put together, and we know how much you can get done, you can work anywhere you want. I don't care where you are, because you're contributing So that's your stake in this, is meet the expectations. My stake in this is make sure you're engaged, that you know who we are and that you feel part of the bigger organization, and do things in a way that's meaningful so that you can create the over the wall conversations, right? You can create the one-on-one conversations. Silly things, not silly, but I would walk by the desk, one of my underwriters whose son was playing as a freshman varsity football at one of this premier Catholic high schools in Sarasota. And every Monday I'd say, how'd they do? So I have to do that now through Teams or through a text or something. Have to continue that same thing so that they feel that they're part of the organization. That's how it's going to work, I think, in the long run. And the companies who figure that out are the ones that are going to win.
Yeah,
they're going to get the best people, and those people are really going to produce for them.
And a huge, I think a huge take home from just a lot of the work or even kind of the just meanderings that I've kind of gone through, like leadership training or just kind of like read up on leadership and stuff like that. If you show me a dysfunctional organization, it's typically because you have dysfunctional leadership, right? And as a manager in this new world, the folks that fulfill those kind of like the worker roles, air quotes worker roles, they haven't really changed all that much, right? Like they're still the same people. It's the managers who really have to kind of adapt, right? Those people that kind of like sit in the seats and do the day-to-day work, they're going to get it done regardless because that's what they need to do in order to pay the bills and, keep a roof over their head and eat and things like that. The manager's role is really the one that's evolving extremely quickly. And to your point, how do you foster that environment where you can have those small, like almost kind of like unscripted or unscheduled conversations? Like, how do you organically, create an environment in a remote, setting that allows for that and allows for that kind of exchange? Because, sometimes it's remote is interesting. Like with some people, they open up more and they're more kind of willing to share, and then other people actually shut down a little bit more when it's remote because they're a little bit more attuned to being in an in-person environment and seeing body language and things like that in order to kind of like share and stuff. So it's definitely an interesting it's going to be crazy to look back 10 years in the future, 20 years in the future as to how this all affected things, because we've only begun to see the tip of the iceberg in terms of how this is really kind of work.
I don't do any conversation that isn't through this media, right? So I know I freak some of my underwriters out because I'll ping them on Teams video, and it's like, well, why is he calling me? And sometimes it's just sometimes just to chat. Hey, how you doing? Because I haven't talked to you in a while, and I'm just curious how you doing. Everything okay?
Now, I'll be the first to say that as a woman, I was like, wait, I didn't have camera here today. I didn't know we were doing this.
And it's okay. You don't have to turn the camera on, but my camera will be on. I want you to see my face. But I do have prescribed meetings where the camera's got to be on. So so it's usually in advance. They know, so you can get.
So they have time to do the camera hair. Okay, thank you for respecting camera hair.
Or a baseball cap. You want to wear a baseball cap? I don't care either, frankly.
But the human side to human resources, even human capital, managing human capital, and understanding that's a thing, right? That's an intentional thing. And so when you're talking about, like, I look at what I did this time last year, and it's no secret, like lifelong learning, I think all of us, have a, becoming a CPCU, even the journey itself, I think kind of reignites that passion that we have. And so I went back to the well, right? So I have 7 designations altogether. The vast majority are through the Institute. Thank you. But I also decided that, hey, learning doesn't stop here. It's okay to be and not or, right? And so I have an ERMI designation, right? Because I went and I got a transportation specific one there. I have my SHRM designation, which is the Society of Human Resource Management, because I wanted to learn more about that as well. And having all of that now, when you were mentioning the commute times and what do we do to keep our minds sharp and things like that, there's so many programs. I hear a lot of people who are ready to revisit the ARM, now that they have the, ability to do so, and some of the remote testing opportunities and things like that. So really taking advantage of this opportunity to continue to grow, and whatever
Mm.
grow means, continuing to stay up to date on things. So my encouragement, even to aspiring writers, maybe before you take that deep dive and go for a whole book, you start off by writing articles, or
Yep.
LinkedIn articles, even if they're not articles for like Insights or somewhere else, to kind of get into that habit, leading up and building up to something. So yeah, just taking advantage, and really, and I know I geek out about, I don't know if I'm a bigger insurance geek or HR geek at this point, I don't know. You kind of mesh them together, and it becomes a thing. But as we're engaging with our employees, as we're engaging with people, like I said, in their home settings, one of the things to be mindful of is the whole concept of like Maslow's hierarchy of needs, right? And so you have employees, and you're trying to talk to them about goals like production goals or whatnot. But if the base of that pyramid's not met, if you have people that have food insecurity, if they have worries about shelter, worries about healthcare, it is really hard to not let those things distract us. And so you might be engaging with someone and you're wondering, hey, why aren't they performing? Or why are things moving? Or why aren't they as motivated? And just that awareness. And there's always been that weird dynamic between leadership, especially, frontline leaders, on, am I allowed to ask those questions? Like, are we supposed to talk about family and the things that happen before or after hours? But I would challenge that, I think in this environment, I remember back in the day working from home when everyone else didn't, you had to apologize every time the doorbell rang, a dog barked.
I know all the dogs are my employees now, because we've been
exactly. You're like, oh, is that Fifi? Oh, okay. So the cat's walking across the keyboard. You weren't texting me a cryptic message. It happens.
Yeah.
But no, I just think that it's a new era,
Yeah.
and as we're talking about like New Year's resolutions, I think most people are afraid to like claim the year because of 2020.
Yeah.
Because look how well that went. And then 2021 did its 2021 thing. And so now it's just like, just take advantage of a season if it opens up, continually press to improve whatever improvement means for you. But I think as long as we're moving forward, baby steps are great leaps and bounds, just always, because nothing stands still. You're either moving forward or falling back. There really is no such thing anymore as just kind of holding the line.
Yeah.
I had a manager once tell me, if you're not learning more, you're actually going backwards. And so that had motivated me. I was motivated before, but that made it very clear to me that I have to continue to further my knowledge of whatever I'm doing.
Yeah. Now, I kind of juxtapose to that. We're running on 45 minutes here, so I'll kind of wrap things up really quickly. But my focus is actually, I don't know if it's necessarily diametrically opposed to what we've been talking about. I think it's actually in line with it, but in a kind of like non-conventional kind of way. I have a habit of taking on too many things. I keep too many balls in the air that I'm juggling, and the problem is that I lack the ability to truly focus on something and become a master of it, or contribute the maximum that I can. And so I actually want to say no more in 2022. And I know it sounds kind of like negative, but in essence, like the way I look at it is I'm doubling down on saying yes to the things I'm already committed to. Right. And so that's definitely something that I need to work on. And I don't know if it's necessarily something that's universal with folks that might watch this program, but I'm sure there's a few of you out there that, you always get asked to do something and you feel bad saying no. You feel bad like not committing. And the problem is that then you feel like you're now having to like play all these trade-offs against each other to, focus on this at the expense of something else. So yeah, that's definitely something that I'm going to commit myself to try and peel away some of these things, or at least not get involved in too much more, especially because I'm going to be on the leadership council in 2022. And so there's a whole other higher level of commitment and responsibility that comes with that position within the society. And so, I'm going to need to make sure to keep the blinders on, right? And head in the direction that I know I need to head in. and not get, ADD, so to speak, as far as like some of these other things that I could get involved in and get in trouble with, basically, is what it boils down to. So, so that's basically my,
a little advice to you on that, Matt. There's time to do those other things. There would, my wife says I don't know how to say no when someone asks me to do things, and it's just the way I am. I've always been that way, but I don't create more opportunities for myself. There were things I wanted to do as I was moving through opportunities in the society, and once I sort of ran out the string, if you would, now the door opened up to do stuff that I always wanted to do. I always wanted to be on the ethics committee, so I joined the ethics committee. I'm having a great time with that group, and then they said, well, we need somebody to be liaison to the publications committee. Well, after It's a Risk, I didn't have a job in the society. When I finished the task force, I was done. I had nothing other than I was a member, which was probably the first time in 25 years that I was just a member for about a week. But the point in that is,
of course,
sort of save some of that stuff for when you sort of finish with whatever the engagement is, because your focus right now is really Leadership Council. That would be my advice to you, because that's such an important part of our organization. And
absolutely,
having someone like you in that, and certainly Precious being engaged in that at some point in time too, I think is really important for the society, because you bring perspectives to us that we don't, that need to be there, right? That are more diverse. When I joined the Leadership Council, it was all white people and mostly men. And if you look at that group right now, it doesn't look that way. And I think that's a testament to what we are as a society, right? We're more reflective of who we are as an organization. And I think that's very clear. And so save some of that stuff, because it's cool to do it when you sort of work through whatever chairs you want to work your way through, and that you can have fun.
Yeah. I find it funny that you were a free agent for a week before
a week.
You signed a new contract.
Exactly.
I'm surprised it was a week.
I wouldn't expect anything more from you, Mike, or less. Final thoughts, closing thoughts, anything like that. Are you guys looking forward to 2022?
I'll let you go first.
Okay. Absolutely. I think every opportunity that we have to really kind of reevaluate, I love that encouragement to be strategic, only say yes to the things that fall in line with what fits right now, and not have any sort of, guilt in turning it away, because turning it away is really doing everyone involved a favor. If I can't do it justice, I'd rather just not. I'd rather give that opportunity to someone else, and being mindful of that too, that's what it is. It's an opportunity, and so if it's not really in line, because I, kind of fall in that as well. There's so many passion projects, and I was like, oh, I like that. Yes, I'll do that. Yes, but then at the end of the day, we all have that same bucket. It's all the same 24 hours.
Yeah.
And so I have a budget, just like I have a monetary budget. I have a time budget. And so I have to be mindful of, there's certain activities that recharge me, and there's other activities that deplete me. And I have to have a good balance of the both. So I look forward to like CPCU days. So I call it with my family. I was like, okay, you guys know it's Wednesday. That means, because it definitely recharges me to be a part of it. So yeah, kind of seeking that balance. I know that's very feng shui, but again, it's all about balance, because you don't want to spread yourself too thin and overcommit and under perform. So nope, I'm absolutely less that I feel seen. I heard you say that, and I said, okay, that was for me. So I've got to be very aligned. How does this further, does this continue to help people envision me in other roles, like Mike said, that I want to, how do I communicate to others what it is I want to be doing, so that I can put myself in places where I can get picked, But yeah, that's really what it's all about, is we got another year to get it right, and that's more than, what we can hope for. So I am optimistic.
Yeah, we get another shot. What about you, Mike?
So 2022 is going to be a very, very exciting year for me. It's an opportunity now for me. The analogy I use is the caterpillar has crawled into his cocoon and he is ready to come out and fly. And so,
he's flapping his wings for you.
so I've thrown a few hints out there, but it's going to be a pivotal year for me, and I'm very excited about the opportunity. I've been working very hard on my plan to get things lined up, but the guy I am today is the same guy, but what I'll be doing from some point in 22 on is a completely different thing. And that's the part that excites me, because it's really not that I don't enjoy the work I do every day, because I've been doing it for 43 years and I wouldn't do it if I didn't love it. But I'm ready to do the things that really drive me, that really bring me great satisfaction. And so being in more than one place at one time will, I think, be something that will happen as we go into 2022, and it makes me very excited.
I love that. I'm excited for you, and I'm excited to find out what you look like as a butterfly when you emerge from your cocoon. And with that, that's the end of this very special. I don't even know if I'll call it an episode. It's this very special kind of short, off the cuff kind of production that we put together here for the CPCU Champion Hour. So, as usual, if you've made it this long, thank you very much. Remember, like, comment, subscribe, share this, get it out there. In the comments, let us know. I should have said this earlier. What's your New Year's resolution? What are you looking to work on, improve? What are you looking to affect in terms of change, whether it be in your life or the world or someone else's life? Let us know. We would love to hear from you in that regard as well. So with that, that's it. Happy New Year to everyone. Definitely thank you for joining us, champions. And with that, peace.
I think these videos are brilliant, and I'm sure you will like them too. Please like, comment, and subscribe. And don't forget to click the notification bell.